What's up everybody, Theheyyman here, back with another tutorial. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a face mask similar to the one that I released a couple weeks ago. Let's go through everything you're going to need to make this happen. First thing you're going to need is your pattern, which you're going to be able to find at theheyyman.com. You're going to need some sort of material to make them out of. I'm just using some old pockets from a pair of jeans that I had laying around. You're going to want something soft for your liner. I chose some of this micro suede. You can find it at any Joann Fabrics, but I'm going to use this for the liner and the binding. You're going to need two 6-inch pieces of elastic cord. You're going to want some marking pens. I have my silver pen and my blue pen, depending on what material you're using it on. You're going to need a knife or some scissors. And finally, a straight edge. It's always good to go with a metal one. That way when you're cutting along it, you're not gouging into it and ruining your straight edge. Let's get started. Alright, so first step is we're going to take our pattern and we're going to start tracing out our pieces. Be sure when you're tracing this pattern that you're flipping it for each side of the mask because it's not symmetrical. It may appear to be, but it's not. Okay, now that I've traced my pattern out onto my pieces, 2 for the front and 2 for the liner, we can begin cutting these out. You're also going to cut out your binding. Your binding needs to be 20 inches long and 1 inch wide. You can just use the ruler to cut right alongside. Alright, let's start cutting. Alright, so now that we have all of our pieces cut out, we have our 2 front pieces, our 2 lining pieces, and our binding. We're going to head over to the sewing machine and we're going to attach our 2 front pieces and our 2 back pieces. You're going to lay them face to face. Again, you should have flipped your pattern so that when you do lay them face to face, they line up perfectly. And then we're just going to sew this stitch right here and attach the 2. Let's go. Okay, now that you have your pieces sewn together, you're going to take your front piece and you're going to flip it, and you'll see that you'll have a really nice seam right down the center. And then what we're going to do to make it easier for us when we get to the binding step is we are going to put these 2 pieces together. So you have the face here and then you have the soft micro suede here on the back. We're going to stitch those together. Easiest way to do that is to take some paper clips and clip it all into place. That way you're not having to hold it together as you're stitching. Alright, now that you have your pieces clipped together, both your front and your back, we're going to go over to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch this. You just want to make sure that you don't come outside of your registration mark. Let's get sewing. have our front and our back sewn together, next step is putting the binding on. When you're doing this, there's a reason we had those registration marks in the first place, and that's because you're going to lay your binding face down right along those marks, and you're going to stitch right at the edge of this binding material all the way around, and then at the end we're going to flip it. That's why we're doing it face down. You're going to flip it, and then you're going to have that nice binded edge right there. Something to keep in mind while you're putting this in is we have to put our elastic in as we're doing this. So once we get to the side, we're going to stop, put our elastic in, continue until we get to our next spot that we need our elastic in. All right, let's head over to the machine and see what we come up with. Okay, now that you have your first stitch for your binding on, you can cut off any excess, and then what we're going to do is flip it around. Now we can grab our paper clips again and hold that binding in place. All right, now that we have our binding flipped over and clipped, it's gonna look like that. You're gonna have a lot of extra here after you're done sewing this. I'm just gonna cut that off after. So now we begin stitching, and I'm gonna stitch right along the edge of the binding to kind of hide the stitch a little bit. Done stitching, you're left with something like that. And again, on the back, got a lot of extra. We're just going to trim all that off. Alright, and there you have it. That's all it takes. The binding can be a little challenging, but it just takes a few attempts, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. And that binding could be applied to anything. Shoes, bags, it's all done the same way. So, final product. Fits pretty good. So that's it. I hope this was helpful. Come back again for more tutorials in the future. Thanks, guys.